correct?
Yes.
And at this particular moment, he's not pointing his gun at you, is he?
Not at that moment.
But you've got your gun pointed at him, correct?
Looking at the video, I think I'm lowering my weapon. I think it's just a still shot of where you have it to where that, but I believe in the whole video I'm lowering it, and then he points his gun at me.
Can you help me understand, Mr. Rittenhouse, why Gage Grosskreutz, with a pistol in his hand, is a threat to kill you, but you, with an AR-15 pointed at him, is not a threat to kill him at this moment? Can you help me understand that?
I've been attacked by several people, and he decided to come and point a gun at my head. Well, first,
He hasn't done that yet, has he?
no.
So again, I ask you, in this moment, you told us Gage Grosskreutz is a threat to you right now.
Yes.
He's got a pistol not aimed at you. You've got an AR-15 aimed at him. Why is he more of a threat to you than you are to him?
Because he was moving at me with a gun in his hand.
This is right after you've killed Anthony Huber, correct?
Yes.
Right after you fired 2 shots at almost point-blank range at the man running towards the camera right now and missing him, correct?
Yes.
And you're telling us Gage Grosskreutz is the real threat at this moment?
Yes.
Can we please pull up exhibit number 80, beginning at frame 468? This is an exhibit which consists of, what's the number, 732? 729 frames from the BG on the Go video that we just watched. This was prepared by James Armstrong of the State Crime Lab. I'm not going to show all 729, but I'd like to start at frame 468, and we're going to go frame by frame from there until frame 500. Mr. Stute, could you please slowly advance frame by frame until I tell you to stop? Mr. Rittenhouse, this is immediately after Gage Grosskreutz has stopped in front of you and you are doing something with your firearm at that moment. Do you recall that?
Yes.
You were asked some questions about what you were doing at that moment. Is it fair to say that you turn your firearm over and you're looking at it, you're examining it?
Yes.
But your testimony is you didn't do anything to actually manipulate it at that moment.
Correct.
Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Okay. Please continue. Frame 500 shows you firing your AR-15 towards Gage Grosskreutz. At this particular moment, he does not have that pistol pointed towards you, does he?
He does.
His left leg has stepped across not directly towards you, but to the side of you, correct?
Yes.
He's reaching in with his left arm towards you, correct?
Yes.
he never steps back and puts the gun in both hands in a ready aim position towards you, does he?
He doesn't do that.
He never takes that gun with his right hand and stands there and holds it out with his right hand in front of him and aims it directly at you, does he?
No, he does this pointing it directly at my head.
And you thought that's the way he was going to shoot you?
Yeah.
You thought he ran up close to you to shoot you?
Yes.
You understand that he could have taken that gun if he wanted to and shot you from 10, 15, 20 feet away, right?
Can you rephrase? Sorry, I'm trying to understand the question.
You understand that a pistol like that doesn't need to be right up close to someone to shoot, right?
Yes.
It can shoot from 10, 15, 20 feet away, right?
Yes.
Mr. Grosskreutz could have stopped 10, 15, 20 feet away if he wanted to shoot you and fired his pistol at you, couldn't he have?
He could have, but he didn't.
And your testimony is that you believed he ran up close to you and reached in with his left hand with his gun in his right hand because that was his way of using this gun to shoot you?
Yes.
Did you think he was reaching in to grab your gun?
No.
You didn't think he was going to take your gun away, did you?
I thought he was going to shoot me.
With his pistol,
Yes.
which he never actually does. Correct?
Correct.
He never fires that gun at you at all.
No.
In fact, in this entire sequence of events, no one ever fired a gun at you, did they?
Mr. Zeminski fired a gun from behind me.
Did Mr. Zeminski fire that gun at you?
I believe so.
What do you base that on? Did you see it?
The video.
Did you see it?
No.
You're talking about back when the incident with Mr. Rosenbaum happens, correct?
Yes.
That happened while you and Mr. Rosenbaum are running across the car source lot, correct?
Yes.
At that moment in time, you didn't see Joshua Zeminski fire a shot, did you?
No.
You heard a gunshot, right?
Yes.
But you had no idea who fired it.
I believed it was Mr. Zeminski.
So that gunshot did not at all factor into your decision to kill Joseph Rosenbaum, did it?
No, Mr. Rosenbaum trying to steal my gun did.
So you didn't think that was a gunshot from Joseph Rosenbaum?
No.
You knew he didn't have a gun?
Oh, I see what your question means now. You didn't think that the shot, which had been fired supposedly by Mr. Zeminski, had been fired by Mr. Rosenbaum.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you heard a gunshot. You now know that was Joshua Zeminski based on watching the videos, right?
Yes.
But at the time, you didn't think that was Joseph Rosenbaum firing that shot, did you?
No.
You knew Joseph Rosenbaum didn't have a gun, right?
Yes.
And you certainly would agree with me that you don't have the right to kill Joseph Rosenbaum for something Joshua Zeminski does, correct?
Yes.
When you heard that gunshot, you didn't know whether it was fired at you or up in the air or at Rosenbaum or anyone else.
Heard it from behind me, but I didn't.
You didn't know where it was aimed, correct? You didn't feel it hit you, correct?
Correct.
You didn't hear it ricochet anywhere near you, correct?
Correct.
You received no indication that that gunshot was going to put your life in danger, correct?
I don't know.
There were gunshots going off all night long, weren't there?
Sorta.
Firecrackers,
Fireworks.
gunshots.
Yeah.
Hard to tell the difference.
Yeah.
Right after you kill Rosenbaum, there's 3 shots right after that, aren't there?
Yes.
From very close to where you were.
Yes.
Yet you don't turn and shoot anybody there after you hear those, did you?
No.
So, getting back to my original question. In this entire sequence of events, no one ever fired a shot at you, did they?
No.
After you kill Anthony Huber, shoot Gage Grosskreutz, and attempt to fire those 2 shots at the person who jumped at you, you got up and you walked away, didn't you?
Yes.
And you're about, what, a block away from the police line?
Yes.
And you know that police line's there because you're running towards it.
Yes.
And There's really nothing in the road between you and that police line, is there? After the shooting? Everybody
No.
scatters?
No, nothing in the road.
So you have a clear line of sight from where you did those shootings to those law enforcement vehicles, correct?
Yes.
And you still have your AR-15,
Yes.
and the crowd is pretty much run after they hear the shots, right?
Yes.
You still have your medic bag,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
You never once offer to help anybody that you just shot, correct?
I don't.
Correct, you don't?
Correct.
Anthony Huber is lying there over on the ground after you shot him once in the chest, correct?
Yes.
You didn't know at that point whether he was alive or dead, did you?
I didn't.
You never went over to check, did you?
No.
You didn't know whether it was possible to save his life at that moment or not, did you?
I didn't.
And you didn't even care. You just kept on walking. Correct?
I kept walking to get to the police line.
Gage Grosskreutz, right after you shoot him in the arm, is yelling, "I need a medic." Did you hear that?
Yes.
That's in the videos, isn't it?
Yes.
You don't do anything to help him, do you?
No.
You just decide to get out of there as fast as you can. Correct?
Yes.
If you had seen someone running up the street with a gun and the crowd was saying that that person just shot someone, like they were saying about you, you would have taken action to stop them yourself, wouldn't you?
No, I wouldn't have.
You're running around putting out fires, aren't you?
Yes.
A shooting's far more serious than a fire, isn't it?
Yes.
You took it upon yourself to do the things that the police and the fire departments weren't doing that night, correct?
I helped put out fires, but I wouldn't say that.
You went around offering medical service because you didn't think there were EMTs or EMS that would be able to come in there, correct?
Yes.
So you took it upon yourself to do the things that you didn't think the police or fire could do, correct?
I wouldn't say I took it upon myself, but I was helping people with first aid and putting out fires at businesses.
So if you saw someone running with a gun and everybody said that guy just shot someone, you would have taken your AR-15 and tried to stop him, wouldn't you? It goes to the crowd's reaction to him, Your Honor. I think you would have reacted the same way.
The crowd is important in terms of it's a factor that bears on some of the counts as to what the surroundings were. Otherwise, the crowd is unimportant, and what he might have done vis-a-vis the crowd is, I don't see where we're going.
Understood. When you got back to that police line and what'd you say, they pepper sprayed you?
I believe so, but I don't remember it.
They told you to get out of the road
Yes.
because they were going in there
Yes.
to do what you hadn't done, which is to try and help the people that you just shot, right?
Yes.
And then you went back after that to the 59th Street car source, didn't you?
Yes.
And you told them that you just shot someone.
Yes.
Someone, meaning an individual person, correct?
I wasn't meaning individual. I was saying I just shot someone. I just shot someone.
You were told by Nick Smith that the police were coming to your location, to the 59th Street car source, right?
I don't recall that.
And yet you decided to flee, didn't you?
No.
You didn't stick around for the police, did you?
I went to go turn myself into the Antioch Police Department
A couple of hours later.
an hour.
Wasn't a couple hours. It shows what time it was.
I'm asking the witness if the witness can answer.
Go ahead, you could answer, sir.
It was a couple of hours later, wasn't it?
No.
And in between leaving that location in downtown Kenosha and getting to Antioch, you were looking at social media, weren't you?
No, I wasn't. My phone was dead.
You had heard from other people that your name was out there, right?
later on in the evening, I believe I heard something, but no,
You knew that your picture was out there, right?
no.
You're telling me, as you sit here under oath, that after those shootings, between then and the time you turned yourself into the Antioch Police Department, you had no idea that there was social media out there with your picture and your name as the shooter.
I'm trying to recall, but I can't. I'm trying to remember. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
I have no further questions.
You
I have
right.
nothing on it.
You may step down, sir.
Your Honor, I have a witness. But before that call that witness, I need to use the men's room.
How about a 5 to 10 minute break? Please don't talk about the case during the break. You may either use the jury room or you may remain down here in the library.
Clouds in the area, but we promise the weather is actually currently acceptable for launch. And again, everything is on track right now. Jack, good to have you back on comms. We're still doing some Q&A, and Chris, I think we'll just continue that way while we wait for them to get walked out here.
I think they will too, because I think they timed walkout for the perfect time, right when the lighting is changing and perfect time, right when the lighting.
So let's see here. A question about how long after launch will it take for Dragon to get to the International Space Station?
So in this case, it will take just about 22 hours to reach the ISS. Liftoff today at 9:03 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and a docking tomorrow just after 10 p.m. Or sorry, just after 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So just over 22 hours from launch to docking.
And how does that differentiate from the Soyuz launches and dockings? Because those sometimes are on the same order of 3 to 6 hours, much shorter than what we're seeing with this commercial crew mission.
Yeah, so Dragon is totally capable of doing those types of fast rendezvous. In fact, the original launch date for Crew 1, before it slipped a day because of weather, would have resulted in about a 7.5 hour timeline between liftoff and docking. The reason the Soyuzes do it as quickly as they do is because the Soyuzes are very, very small and they're very, very cramped. And crews were reporting a lot of discomfort with the 2-day rendezvous profile that the Soyuz is used to employ. So, in an effort to make the crew more comfortable, Roscosmos invested a lot in being able to do these, get them there as fast as they possibly can so they can get out of the cramped vehicle. The Dragons are much larger and they do not carry that same requirement to get to the station that quickly. The Dragons actually carry a requirement to do it within about 24 hours. Now there's some leeway there. It can be, 24, 27, ish in there. But the requirement for the commercial crew vehicles is that they be able to dock within a day. But really, it's just the roominess in the spacecraft and crew comfortability is why the Soyuzes do it quicker.
All
To
right,
be
sounds
fair,
good.
if we really wanted to reposition the ISS every single time we attempted to launch it,
Cool, pretty fantastic. Well,
Everybody that you shot at night, you intended to kill, correct?
I didn't intend to kill them. I intended to stop the people who were attacking me.
By killing them.
I did what I had to do to stop the person who was attacking me.
By killing them.
2 of them passed away, but I stopped the threat from attacking me.
by using deadly force
I used deadly force.
that you knew was going to kill.
I didn't know if it was going to kill them, but I used deadly force to stop the threat that was attacking me.
You intentionally used deadly force against Joseph Rosenbaum, correct?
Yes.
You intentionally used deadly force against the man who came and tried to kick you in the face,
Yes.
correct? You intentionally used deadly force against Anthony Huber, correct?
Yes.
You intentionally used deadly force against Gage Grosskreutz, correct?
Yes.
With regard to Joseph Rosenbaum, you fired 4 shots at him, correct?
Yes.
You intended to kill him, correct?
I didn't intend to kill him. I intended to stop the person who was attacking me and trying to steal my gun.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this matter be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Be seated.
Could you please state your name, spelling your last name for the record?
Kyle Rittenhouse, Rittenhouse.
Kyle, where do you reside?
Walworth County.
How old are you?
18.
On August 25th of 2020, did you come to downtown Kenosha to look for trouble?
No.
Would you have shot Joseph Rosenbaum if he hadn't chased you trying to take your firearm?
Objection, leading.
It's not kind of leading.
Would you... I'll get to it. Are you a high school graduate?
Yes.
What high school?
Penn Foster Online High School.
Are you currently enrolled in any further studies?
I'm a college student studying nursing at Arizona State University. Through Central High.
Report that we just received.
Yes.
And I object to it.
Leave car source to
It's
what
over the court's order and it's untimely.
Is it eight? Is it differ from the former report?
Your Honor, the only thing that is different is it adds the new discovered video from Friday.
It also gives his opinions as to what the defendant was doing that night and his self-defense and what he was thinking and believing, etc., the pursuit, etc. There's a lot of opinions in here about what the defendant was doing. The court's order on
Let
this...
me just interrupt. I think I stated that I would allow the imaging sequences, the measurement of that, and I think I said I would allow the observations he had made about the capacity of people to observe multiple objects. That's a poor way of summarizing it. That type of data, and when he talked about the car accidents, and I think it was limited to that. So he may have leftover impressions or opinions, but I don't expect I would be admitting any of that.
And I'm not intending to.
Okay.
This new written report has those, so I am objecting. It should not be admitted into evidence or shown to the jury.
All right. I don't expect it will be, and if it's offered, it'll unless he's got some astonishing justification, then it won't be admitted because I said I wasn't.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, the question becomes, how long will this take? Shame on me. It's 20 to 5.
Yeah. It's been a long day too. I don't know.
Yeah.
If you did that.
But he's come here from Oregon, and you want to get him in.
Well, no, you're available tomorrow, first thing.
I mean, if I thought you could get your direct in 20 minutes,
Absolutely not.
then why don't we wait till tomorrow? Well, I shouldn't say that. Tell me what is expected course of the case after that, because maybe I would let you if it.
witness three.
Three? Raise your right hand.
Your Honor,
Um,
that's what we have under subpoena. Well, Mr. Black isn't under subpoena. We have Drew Hernandez and Bray to clear up the racking, the spent shell casings, and what evidence was recovered.
You know, I don't want to.
That's
I thought Officer Van Wee testified to emptying the gun when at the hospital.
at the crime scene.
Yeah.
Number two, event
Right.
number two, state is saying that my client, Paige
I know
Grossquist,
what's being
re-racked
said.
the gun. If there was
Yeah,
a
I understand that, and I thought that Officer Van Wee said that there was a full except for 8 shot, 8 bullets.
but there was no, the word I'm looking for, live round found at event number two. So if there was a re-racking of that bolt, there would have been a live round. And
Oh,
there
see,
were-
I counted and I came up with a full load, even without any bullet being found.
and maybe I'm just, and additionally, that Mr. Grossquist said he didn't know whether or not his gun had one in the chamber. Bukowski testified to it, and in fact, there is a live round right on the ground.
Oh, this is what your third. Okay, well, let's deal with the realities of it. Unless you gentlemen are prepared to tell me that you're going to send me your proposed instructions on within by 4, like 7 or 7 or 8 o'clock tonight. And unless you're going to tell me that you're going to argue for less than an hour and a half each, then we're going to end up either working Saturday or working on Monday. So let's take a vote here, because the jury did clear Tuesday. And of course, I think I read once that Abraham Lincoln, when he took a vote on the Emancipation Proclamation, all the votes were no. And then he said, but the deciding vote is aye. And so I'm going to take a vote about what you folks want to do, but that doesn't mean it's going to come out the way you want. So who wants to work Saturday?
I'll work Saturday, I'll work Monday, I'll do whatever the court asks me.
Who wants to come back on Monday? Okay, so it's 1 to they don't care to, I'm going to vote with you on Monday. So, okay, so I know. Is it okay if I tell the jury we are hopeful that we will conclude the case on Monday? I understand that. Is there going to be extensive rebuttal?
I don't think it's going to be extensive, but
Yeah.
we do reserve the right to
Sure,
follow up.
yeah, I understood. Well, maybe I'll tell them I expect that we'll finish in the time which was given to us, which was included Tuesday. And we'll see what happens. All right. Anything else before I call the jury down? Oh, and then I'm going to dismiss them for the day. And we'll start in the morning with Dr. Black. Anything else? Yeah, that'd be cool.
So email.
But if you, are you telling me that would be,
I'm telling you that I'll do whatever you want.
if you want by 8?
We're talking just about the count 6, right?
Yeah, well, you know what? I'll send you my preliminary. No, I won't do that. I'll send you my preliminary tonight, as long as we're not going to argument until next week. I'm not even going to promise that. Let's just, cool. All right. Let's call the jury down, dismiss them for the day. You don't have to send me anything tonight, and I won't send you anything. Oh.
What are you doing?
When I left, I was with Ryan Balch, and we would go out and that both of us would, I believe.
And There was a second occasion where he threatened you?
The car source lot number 2 was.
And did you get back? Were you able to go in a northerly direction?
I wasn't.
Describe what happens.
Once I take that step back, I look over my shoulder and Mr. Rosenbaum was now running from my right side. And I was cornered from in front of me with Mr. Zeminski. And there were...
All right, folks. How many are in favor of my continuing to allow that right
There
to
was-
flicker through the remainder of the trial?
People
Why don't we get maintenance in here and hopefully they can fix that. And we're gonna stop for the day.
That's what I... That's what I run.
Time for our break anyway. You can just relax for a minute, sir. We're going to take a break about 10 minutes, and please don't talk about the case during the break. Read, watch, or listen to any.
Realize the only place I can run with the people around me is straight towards the building of his arms out in front of him. I remember his hand on the barrel of my gun.
And why didn't you just keep running?
When I was over there, there were about 100 people surrounding those cars, and there was no space for me to continue to run to.
Okay. And so you turned around,
Yes,
and as you see him lunging at you, what do you do?
I shoot him.
And how many times did you shoot?
I believe 4.
And after you shot him, what did you do?
The people around the cars that were originally there were not there anymore. They moved away, and I ran around to see if I could help Mr. Rosenbaum.
And when you got to Mr. Rosenbaum, what was happening?
Mr. McGinnis he took off his helmet and slammed it on the ground and took off his shirt, and I don't remember what he said. I wasn't focused on that. I was in shock, sort of.
Let me back up a second. Did you know Mr. McGinnis was even around?
I didn't.
Okay. And he says something to you, and what do?
I pull out my phone and I call Dominic Black.
And you call Dominic, and what do you say?
I told him I just shot somebody. I had to shoot him.
And what do you do then?
I now know it to be Kelly Zeminski, Joshua Zeminski, and I don't know the other people were screaming, "Get his ass, get his ass, get him, get him, get him."
And based upon that, did you feel as though you were safe to stay where you were at?
I thought the safest option would be to go north down Sheridan to turn myself into the law enforcement down there.
And as you head down Sheridan Road, describe what's going on.
As I'm running, at first I'm in the sidewalk, and Mr. Lukowski, Jason Lukowski, is in the sidewalk, and I stop to talk to Mr. Lukowski for a brief second. I remember telling him that I just shot somebody and I need help to get to the police because the crowd, there was a mob was chasing me.
And did Mr. Lukowski offer you any help?
I don't remember.
Okay. What do you do then?
I continued to run after hearing people were saying cranium him, get him, kill him. People were screaming, and I just was trying to get to the police running down Sheridan Road.
And you say, I'm trying to get to the police. Why were you trying to get to the police?
So I didn't do anything wrong. I defended myself.
Did you feel as though there was safety where the police were?
Yes.
And as you head down Sheridan Road, what's the next thing you remember?
The next thing I remember is Anthony Huber striking me in the head with a skateboard.
Okay. As you sit here today, do you remember talking to Gage Grosskreutz?
Yeah, sorta, a little bit. I didn't know it was Gage Grosskreutz when he came up to me, but sorta.
Okay. And when this individual runs up to you and gets how close?
I would say within a foot.
Did you shoot him?
I did not.
Did you point your gun at him?
I did not.
Why not?
I didn't see him as a threat to my safety or life.
Okay, was he armed at that time?
Not that I noticed.
Okay. And you continue running in a northerly direction down.
I didn't see him as a threat to my safety or life.
Okay, was he armed at that time?
Not that I noticed.
Okay. And you continue running in a northerly direction down Sheridan Road?
Correct.
And as you're running in that direction, you said the next thing you remember is Anthony Huber.
Yes.
Describe that.
Anthony Huber, what I remember is running past Anthony Huber, and as I'm running past Mr. Huber, he's holding his skateboard like a baseball bat, and he swings it down, and I block it with my arm, trying to prevent it from hitting me, but it still hits me in the neck, and as I block it, it goes flying somewhere off in the distance.
And did you stop then?
No.
What do you do next?
I keep running down Sheridan Road towards the police line.
Then what happens?
I get lightheaded. I almost pass out and I stumble and hit the ground. Identified. Jumps at me he was wearing boots, I believe, and as he's running at me and jumping, as his boot is making contact with my face, I fired 2 shots at him.
Why did you shoot at him?
I thought if I were to be knocked out, or he would have stomped my face in if I didn't fire.
As a result of being kicked in the face, what happens?
Mr. Huber, immediately after I'm kicked in the face, runs up as I'm sitting up to try to get up and get to the police. I'm on my back, and Mr. Huber runs up. As I'm getting up, he strikes me in the neck with his skateboard a second time.
Then what happened?
He grabs my gun, and I can feel it pulling away from me, and I can feel the strap starting to come off my body.
And what do you do then?
I fire 1 shot.
And after you fire striking, we now know Mr. Huber, what do you do?
I lower my weapon, and I see Mr. Grosskreutz with his hands up, and as I'm lowering my weapon, I look down, and then Mr. Grosskreutz, he lunges at me with his pistol pointed directly at my head.
Now, you heard Mr. Grosskreuz's testimony about re-racking?
Yes.
Did you re-rack your weapon?
I did not.
Could I have the exhibit, please? Make sure to see it. Mark, exhibit 28. Recognize this?
I do.
Now, when somebody would, as Mr. Grosskreutz said, re-rack, is that this?
Yes.
Do you call it re-racking?
I call it charging, putting a live round into the chamber.
And to recharge, you have to pull this all the way back?
Yes.
Say that's about 4 inches. No, I'm asking you if you agree with that approximation. Mr. Rittenhouse, how far do you think that is?
3-4 inches.
If the weapon is loaded and you re-rack,
If there was already a round in the chamber, when you re-rack the rifle, a live round would come out, chambering a new round into the chamber.
Now, we got to the point where Mr. Groskowitz is standing in front of you, has his hands up,
Correct.
and are you aware that he's armed?
At that point, I do see a pistol in his hand.
Is that the same or different from your first encounter with Mr. Groskowitz?
That is different.
And he is standing, you said. How close to you?
What I remember is our feet were touching, what it seemed like.
Okay. And you do what?
My rifle is down, his hands are up, his pistol is in his hand, and then Mr. Groskowitz looks at me, and that's when Mr. Groskowitz brings his arm down like this, like his arm is like that with me on the ground, and his pistol is pointed at me, and that's when I shoot him.
How many times did you shoot him?
Once.
And after you shoot Mr. Groskowitz, do you know where you shot him?
No.
What happens after you shoot him?
He's no longer a threat to me. There's only one person in front of me, and his hands are up. I briefly point my rifle at him, and I get onto one knee, getting up, and he backs up with his hands up, and I don't shoot him.
Did you notice anybody to your side?
To my left, there was a gentleman with a pipe, and to my right, I believe it was a fence post. I don't know what it was, but it was a large object.
Once you're to your feet, what do you do?
I start walking towards the police line to turn myself into the police.
Describe, where is the police line? Is it still in the same place?
It moved up a little bit. I was down in the road about approximately right here. I'd say over here somewhere in this area. I don't remember exactly, but the police line was right here. I could see the flashing lights as I was trying to get to the police before.
Okay. And as you go towards the police line, describe what happened.
I run and walk. I put my hands up, and as I'm walking towards the police, I can't really hear anything. My vision is very narrow. I can only see directly in front of me. I see the flashing lights. I remember I occasionally tried to move my rifle behind me to put it behind me so the police didn't see me as a threat when I tried to turn myself in. I continue to walk, and then I walk towards the window of the sedan, the police cruiser sedan. I don't know what they're called. And I tell the officer, I just shot somebody. And the officer says, get the back or you're going to get pepper sprayed. Go home, go home, go home.
And where do you go after you step back from the police car?
I go to car source number 2.
Okay. And now there wasn't a line there. They weren't stopping people from going in a northerly direction.
No, they weren't.
And you go to car source, what we refer to as car source number 2, and who do you see?
I get there and I think the first person I see is Joanne Fiedler. I don't remember exactly, but I believe that's who's outside at the door. They let me inside. The door was locked, so somebody had to get the key to unlock it. And then we go inside, and I'm in shock. I don't really remember what was happening in there. I was freaking out. I was just attacked. My head was spinning.
And did you go and turn yourself into the Kenosha Police Department?
I did not.
Why not?
The Kenosha Police Department was barricaded off with a fence, and I don't think they were accepting anybody to come to the police department at that time.
What did you do then?
I went to the nearest police department that I knew of, which was Antioch Police Department in Illinois by my house.
Who took you there?
My mother.
Okay. How did you get to Antioch from downtown Kenosha?
Dominic Black drove me.
Okay. And then Dominic Black drives you where?
He drives me to my house in Antioch, Illinois, where I meet with my mother and sisters, and I tell them what happened. I sort of tell them what happened. I was still in shock. My head was still spinning, and then we go to the Antioch Police Department where I turn myself in.
Who drove over to the Antioch Police Department?
My mother.
And did anybody else go there with you?
Not at first.
Okay. And you get to the Antioch Police Department approximately what time?
I would say about an hour after the shooting.
Okay. And when you get there, are they looking for you?
No.
Did you have to explain to somebody?
I had to tell them that I was just involved in a shooting in Kenosha and I needed Kenosha detectives.
Okay. Did they take you into custody immediately?
No.
What did they do?
They had me sit in the lobby of the police department.
Were you handcuffed to a chair?
I was not.
Did you stay there?
For about... I couldn't give you the exact time, but until Detective Howard and Detective Antaranium showed up.
Okay. And were you having any physical discomfort as you waited there?
I was vomiting and having panic attacks, and my head was spinning, and I couldn't think clearly at that point.
I have nothing.
Tim?
I was cornered from in front of me with Mr. Zeminski, and there were...
Holder.
There were people right there.
Did. Look, the kid's not a professional actor, and I don't think that's an Academy Award performance if he is. That's a kid who was overcome with emotion. And again, you're talking about a kid who was there to put out fires, to provide medical assistance, who was there because he saw a town on fire.
And genuinely feels bad that he hurt somebody who was trying to kill him.
Yeah. Yeah. You know who doesn't feel that way?
The ear gauge guy who didn't care at all, who sat there with dead eyes like it was no problem.
Well, not only that, but you know who doesn't feel that way? The person who runs up and points a gun at somebody who was not violent toward them. The person who puts on a mask and runs out behind a car screaming, "F you and I'll kill you," when they weren't aggressive towards them and corners them.
Or attacks people smaller and weaker that are turned around.
Right. God, my heart breaks for that kid.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's real. Maybe that's why they put him on the stand.
Yeah.
Because they knew, you know what? This trial needs a little bit of authenticity. All of a sudden, when the veil of pomp and circumstance is lifted, and you just see, right? And all of you right now, we all feel
occasions during this trial where they've opened the door. The one time when they're going into Mr. Rosenbaum's prior, the reason he doesn't like guns, and I said something, I whispered in Mr. Krause's ear, it's because of the prior convictions. Please stop. And he did. He knows if you're going to go into something that's been excluded in a pretrial order, you better ask the court, you better get permission. This is ridiculous.
It wasn't excluded, Your Honor.
You know why it was excluded in the first place? Because it was propensity evidence. That is exactly what 90404 is designed to prevent. You're talking about his attitudes. His attitude is he wants to shoot people. Now, I've admitted that kind of evidence in other trials when it's been appropriate. I didn't admit it in this case because, to me, what I've heard in this trial, and by the way, Mr. Richards absolutely correctly points out that just hours ago, I said I had heard nothing in this trial to change any of my rulings. So why?
Testimony, Your Honor.
Pardon me?
That was before the defense
Don't
testimony.
get brazen with me. You knew very well. You know very well that an attorney can't go into these types of areas when the judge has already ruled without asking outside the presence of the jury to do so. So don't give me that. That's number one. Number two, this is propensity evidence. I said at the time that I made my ruling, and I'll repeat again now for you, I see no similarity between talking about wishing you had your AR gun, which you don't have, so that you could fire rounds at these thought to be shoplifters, and the incidents in these cases, which are not, there's nothing in your case that suggests the defendant was lying in wait to shoot at somebody or reflecting upon the shooting for a vast amount of time. Every one of the incidents involves matters that involve seconds in time. So I commented at the time, I don't see the similarity, and I don't see the similarity now. You have an incident where he's making comments about some alleged shoplifters versus crimes that involve instantaneous actions, whether premeditated murder or whether self-defense. That's for the jury to decide. But I don't see the similarity. I said it couldn't come in, and it isn't coming in, no matter what you think. Number two, I have to be concerned that with what Mr. Richards has said about the progress of the trial, and when you were I said you were over the line close to or over the line on commenting on the defendant's pretrial silence, which is a well-known rule. I'm astonished that would have been an issue. So I don't want to have another issue as long as this case continues. Is that clear?
It is.
Thank you. I ask the jury to come back in, please.
A police officer in Kenosha, Wisconsin shoots a black man named Jacob Blake 7 times from behind, leaving him partially paralyzed.
I think we could have been looking at an even worse scenario.
We also spoke with the sheriff who led law enforcement's response that night, which has become the subject of lawsuits. While protests against systemic racism were what first drew out crowds in Kenosha, Rittenhouse, his victims, and many of those closest to the shootings were white. What we found was a complex set of motivations on the streets that night that reflected the growing polarization in the country and helped set the scene for violence.
Oh, shit.
That Blake didn't pose a threat. And soon, a Facebook post will incite more of them to come. It's Tuesday morning, 13 hours before the Rittenhouse shooting, when on a Facebook page called The Kenosha Guard, a post publishes.
So my post just basically said, are there any patriots among us willing to take up arms and defend our lives, our families, our neighborhoods, and our businesses?
The author of the post is Kevin Mathewson, a controversial former city councilman who's now been subpoenaed in the Rittenhouse trial.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're starting to gather here. There's about 10 of us.
Hours after his post, thousands have seen it, and Mathewson arrives at Civic Center Park. the epicenter of the recent protests.
When you burn down a building, you're risking lives, right?
I wanted people to come play defense. I wanted people to come to protect themselves.
But did any business owners ask you for help, for protection?
I was not asked directly by a business to defend anybody.
At this point, demonstrators are marching peacefully in downtown Kenosha. They're demanding an end to police violence against black people. The presence of openly armed white men inflames the situation.
If you're not for Black Lives Matter and you're not for the movement, get the fuck out of here.
Why is he here, and why is it okay that he's here with an assault rifle to protect infrastructure? But if I was here against the police to protect life, would I be able to?
The Second Amendment is meant for everybody. It's not exclusive to white people.
Out of everyone that I saw with the militia, they were all white males. So I honestly feel that they came to incite more racial problems.
Portia Bennett, who's a local activist, has been protesting for the last 2 days.
You get to see the people now that you have been living around forever. There are no more masks being worn.
Are there some truly peaceful protesters that may have been a little intimidated about seeing an armed person with a gun? Probably, but the Second Amendment is very clear, and my rights don't end where somebody else's feelings begin.
Throughout the day and early into the evening, more openly armed men arrive near the protests. Some position themselves close to businesses that had been damaged on earlier nights. This is where we first see Ryan Balch, an Iraq and Afghanistan veteran from a town 40 minutes away, who's there with a group of friends. He's also been subpoenaed in the Rittenhouse trial.
I would say what brought me to Kenosha was that I felt like something needed to be done. If law enforcement's not going to try to keep the peace, then somebody else needs to go out there and make sure that that happens.
Balch argues that his military training gave him the skills to help bring events under control.
We kind of trusted ourselves to insert ourselves in that situation and bring the situation. I don't think they trained formally together at all, but the more guys you got, the better off you are.
As for Rittenhouse, we don't know whether he sees himself as some kind of neutral force between the protesters and the police, like Ryan does. His social media posts at the time seemed to indicate he was a strong supporter of law enforcement. Since the shooting, he's also been seen flashing white power signs. And he's become an icon for far-right groups. Soon, Balch and Rittenhouse will come face to face with racial justice protesters.
It's past the curfew. Still have a fairly large crowd out here.
The organized daytime protests at the park are now over, and law enforcement has announced a curfew.
Our goal that entire evening was to disperse people from the Civic Center after curfew and to get them to leave.
We start with a new phase now in the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse. The defense is now calling witnesses after prosecutors rested their case yesterday.
And one of the last pieces of evidence from the state was never before seen drone video. It shows the moment Kyle Rittenhouse shot Joseph Rosenbaum. Medical examiner testified it was unclear whether Rosenbaum was lunging for Rittenhouse's gun at the time or falling because he'd been shot.
Bullet goes in and across and down.
That's correct.
Okay, so once again, in the position of lunging would put you in a horizontal position, correct?
It would.
But they would be, as he's in a horizontal position, perhaps falling after being struck in the hip.
That's right.
Specialist. The judge dropped a charge against Rittenhouse for violating city curfew. He still faces the more serious charges, felonies. The most serious of them comes with a potential life sentence.
And the defense will call more witnesses to the stand starting this morning.
So we're joined once again by our local defense attorney and legal analyst, Patrick Cafferty. So Patrick, the defense widely expected to call Kyle Rittenhouse to the stand, but his attorneys are already building their case of self-defense with other witnesses. Who are these early witnesses and what are they being called to add to the conversation?
Good morning. So generally speaking, my observation of the defense at this point is they're attempting to create doubt about the case that the government or the state has created. Because keep in mind, in a criminal case, the state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person did what they did, and whatever defense they're claiming is applicable is not applicable. They have to basically prove a negative. So in calling certain witnesses, the defense is attempting to undermine the credibility of the state's case as a whole. So, for example, the defense called Nathan DeGroon, who indicated that the prosecutor had attempted to get him to change his testimony. I don't know whether that's true or not, but one way or the other, if the jury believes that's true, it's going to undermine the credibility of the prosecutor once he gets up there during closing argument. They're going to have doubts about what it is he's saying. The other thing that the defense has done by getting the curfew ticket dismissed is, again, undermining the government's case. The government's position has basically been he didn't belong there because he was out after curfew. He didn't belong there because nobody had invited him to protect this car lot. He didn't belong there with a gun because he was underage. The defense has now undermined those theories that the state is attempting to put forward. They've put forth witnesses who say, yes, he was welcome at the car lot. He was legitimately protecting the business. They've gotten the citation dismissed. So they're saying, basically, there was no curfew violation. He had the right to be there. And then they'll work on the gun in terms of him being able to defend himself regardless of what his age was. So the defense at this point isn't necessarily building a case because they're not obligated to do that. They're undermining the government's case, and frankly, it appears that they're doing an effective job.
Patrick Cafferty, defense attorney and legal analyst. Patrick, thanks so much again for your time this morning, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
She takes a picture.
We want to bring in our attorney, Jonathan Lavoie, who has been providing context throughout this trial with us.
So go ahead.
So I want to ask this question. We've been fighting over who would ask the first question, Jonathan. Today we listened to this debate over whether or not Rosenbaum was lunging or falling when he was shot by Rittenhouse. Why does that matter?
Well, it's amazing, guys, that we're all watching the same videos, but depending on who you ask, some people believe he was lunging and some people are saying he was falling. It matters because if you believe the prosecution side of the story, that he was falling away after being shot. But if you believe the defense position, he was lunging at the gun, which supports self-defense. So we see each side taking a different opinion as to what that video really shows.
So, Jonathan, you mentioned the gun. Jurors today got to see the actual AR-15 rifle used in the shootings and a demonstration from a Kenosha detective, including the prosecutor asking the detective at one point to point the weapon at him. Why such a dramatic moment?
I thought that was something, and I thought the judge was a little bit nervous about that happening too. They normally don't point weapons in court, but I think that the prosecution was trying to make a point and trying to show the angles of what was happening, and I think he was trying to show just the power of this weapon, and was trying to show the jury sort of what was happening during the shooting.
All right. Do you think that all signs are pointing to closing arguments by the end of this week?
I do. I think that it's moving exactly what the parties thought it would.
Right now, the second week in the murder trial of Kyle Rittenhouse is currently underway. In fact, just moments ago, the jury heard emotional testimony from a man who was shot by Rittenhouse the night of that attack in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Here's NBC News correspondent Gabe Gutierrez.
Aaron and Morgan, good afternoon. A critical piece of testimony today in this courthouse behind me. Gage
Grosskreutz, the man that Kyle Rittenhouse shot and wounded during those demonstrations last summer following the police shooting of Jacob Blake here in Kenosha, is now on the witness stand. He is describing his initial interactions with Kyle Rittenhouse that night. Now, importantly, he is telling the prosecution that he brought his own weapon to the demonstrations, that he came down here as a medic. He said that his permit to carry that gun was expired, and he could not recall whether there was an actual bullet in the chamber. But he says when he first saw Kyle Rittenhouse, at some point, he believed him to be an active shooter. He does say that he approached Rittenhouse, and that is something that the defense will likely tear into during cross-examination, trying to paint him as the aggressor. And Aaron and Morgan, this is the central question of this case. Did Kyle Rittenhouse act in self-defense? That is what his attorneys are arguing. But last week, the prosecution began to lay out its case, playing about a dozen videos or so from different angles about Rittenhouse's interaction with another man, Joseph Rosenbaum, the first that he shot. Rosenbaum was killed, but Rittenhouse is claiming again that he acted in self-defense. The prosecution trying to convince the jury that it was a Rittenhouse who was looking for trouble and drawn to chaos, as they put it, like a moth to a flame. Now, the prosecution is expected to rest its case potentially as early as perhaps tomorrow. Then it will be the defense's turn, and Rittenhouse's attorneys have indicated that he will testify himself. Aaron and Morgan, back to you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.
Wireless family plans. Wireless family plans.
Representing the defense here, would you advise your client, Mr. Rittenhouse, to take the stand?
Craig, 100%. I think that whenever you kill someone and you're claiming that you were justified or that you weren't setting out with lethal intent to kill someone, you almost have to take the stand. The problem with this case, and this builds off what Greg is saying, is that legally they've got Kyle Rittenhouse. And that's made very clear, especially with the way people are interpreting Grosskreutz testimony from yesterday. But the juries don't care about the law. Trials are about storytelling. And the way this is tilting lets you know that Rittenhouse has to take the stand and say, listen, yes, I shot these people. I killed 2 of them, but I did it in self-defense. Without that, his lawyers can't pound that home during their closing arguments.
David, the medical examiner is right now talking about some of the wounds that he observed on the men who were killed. He said Anthony Huber died from a gunshot wound to the chest. Here's one exchange.
And were you able to determine the cause of death to Mr. Huber?
Yes.
And what was that cause of death?
Mr. Huber died from a gunshot wound to the chest.
And is that an opinion given to with a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
It is.
Why are those details so important, David?
Well, Craig, here's the issue with medical examiners generally. We always think of John Quincy MD or CSI, and most of them are not like that. They spend their days in a cold room dealing with cadavers, and their personalities tend to reflect that. You want to call them in to do exactly what he did, just establish what the immediate cause of death was. The reason why it's important is because Kyle Rittenhouse actually showed a high degree of skill with his rifle. It's clear that he was shooting for center mass. He was shooting with lethal intent, and that's why he killed the 2 people that he did. This testimony plays directly into that so that you can argue it that way during closing arguments.
Based on, David, what you've seen and heard so far, again, important to note here that we have not heard from the defense yet, but I mean, what do you make of the case that the prosecution has made so far?
You know, Craig, what I make of this more than anything else is poor witness preparation of Grosskreutz yesterday. It should have come as no surprise that he approached Kyle Rittenhouse with a gun. It should have come as no surprise that the jury might interpret that as being aggressive. And let me tell you why that's a problem. If you had an active shooter in a school and a teacher raised a gun at that shooter, no one would think, oh, the teacher's in the wrong. You'd immediately know the teacher was in the right to defend the students against the active shooter. But for some reason, people didn't see Grosskreutz that way when he testified yesterday, who were watching the trial from the outside. You had a situation where Rittenhouse is running down the street with a gun. People are pointing at him saying, hey, he shot those people. He shot those people. Under those circumstances, Grosskreutz was justified in using lethal force, but the people watching the trial don't see it that way. And that perception is what carries the day with the jury. That's what makes me concerned about the outcome of this case.
David Henderson, we'll leave it there with you. Thank you, sir. Gabe, keep us posted on the trial itself. Gabe Gutierrez on the ground for us there in Kenosha.
Wireless family plans save you money, but then you have to deal.
Rain-X Premium Silicone Wiper Blades last 2 times.
His turn to make their case for why they believe Kyle Rittenhouse had to shoot. But today, jurors heard in medical terms how those bullets killed the 2 men he shot.
Attorneys used Kyle Rittenhouse's own weapon in a posthumous courtroom recreation of Joseph Rosenbaum's final movements.
That hand was over the barrel of Mr. Rittenhouse's gun when his hand was shot.
That makes sense.
Prosecutors played this newly seen drone video, slowed down by half, showing Joseph Rosenbaum chasing Kyle Rittenhouse and a clearer image of their contact seconds before Rittenhouse fired 4 times from his AR-15.
Your theory or your belief to a reasonable degree of medical certainty is that he's in a horizontal position close to my client. The bullet goes in and across and down.
That's correct.
Okay. So once again, in the position of lunging would put you in a horizontal position, correct?
It would.
But prosecutors say it was Rittenhouse's first shot that knocked Rosenbaum over, prompting the fatal shot to his back.
So if Mr. Rosenbaum was struck in the hip, that his momentum kept carrying him forward, he was falling. The other 3 shots could have been as he was falling.
That's possible too.
It's consistent with that.
It is.
Rittenhouse sometimes struggled, several times refusing to look up as graphic autopsy photos sat on the screen for jurors to take in. 2 more people who patrolled with Rittenhouse that night described seeing the teen after he'd killed 2 men.
And he sat down. I remember him pulling his hair back, and he's pulling it back really hard. And just his comment was, my God, my life might be over.
I tell him to walk outside and turn himself in. That was the safe bet for him. And I told him to walk outside, and he had said, I had to shoot someone.
When they do begin deliberating, jurors will now consider 1 fewer charge against Kyle Rittenhouse after the judge sided with the defense in their request to drop the most minor charge of violating a city curfew that night.
The trial of Kyle Rittenhouse, accused of killing 2 people during the police protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Tonight, hear the dramatic testimony from the courtroom today from the medic who was shot and survived, who said he thought he was going to die. Here's ABC's Alex Perez.
In court today, jurors for the first time hearing from the man who was shot by Kyle Rittenhouse and survived. Gage Grosskreutz testifying about when he initially came upon Rittenhouse armed with a semi-automatic rifle.
I thought that the defendant was an active shooter.
Thinking Rittenhouse had shot people, Grosskreutz started following him that night as the teenager appeared to be running away. Prosecutors playing a live stream video Grosskreutz recorded. You can hear Grosskreutz asking Rittenhouse questions.
Hey, what are you doing? You shot somebody? Who shot?
Rittenhouse, prosecutors say, had already shot and killed Joseph Rosenbaum when Grosskreutz says he witnessed him shoot Anthony Huber, who also died. Armed with his own Glock pistol, Grosskreutz testified he pointed his weapon in Rittenhouse's direction.
What was going through your mind? That I was going to die?
Rittenhouse shot Grosskreutz in the arm. Grosskreutz testified he never intended to shoot Rittenhouse, but the defense arguing Rittenhouse only fired in self-defense.
It wasn't until you pointed your gun at him that he fired, right?
Correct.
And David, if convicted, Rittenhouse could face life in prison. The prosecution could arrest their case as early as tomorrow. David?
Alex Perez tonight. Thank you, Alex.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.
This is the dimension of imagination.
Graphic videos played for the jury today in the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse in Kenosha, Wisconsin. He faces 7 charges, including intentional homicide in the shooting deaths of 2 men and the wounding of another during civil unrest in the city in August of 2020 after a Kenosha police officer shot a black man in the back. Now, defense attorneys don't dispute that Rittenhouse fired fatal shots, arguing instead that he acted in self-defense. We have more tonight from CNN's Adrian Broadus. And again, a warning, some of the video you're about to see is graphic.
As Kyle Rittenhouse looked on, prosecutors played video after video of the gunshots that started a night of horror. First, a single shot. Then 7 more. The shooting and what happens next have Rittenhouse facing life in prison for the worst of 5 felonies, first-degree intentional homicide. Both sides agree Joseph Rosenbaum was the first Rittenhouse killed, but the defense jumping in to make clear their client didn't fire the first shot heard on the video.
But Mr. Washington, it was the first shot. It was not Mr. Rittenhouse's shot.
Instead, all sides agree a third person fired that first shot. The defense questioning an eyewitness who live-streamed the incident to make its point that Rittenhouse was not an aggressor.
You described Rosenbaum as acting erratic, right?
From all of the moments that I was around that you can notice, yes.
You described Rosenbaum as erratic, and if this is fair, and Rittenhouse as chain smoking. Yes?
I suppose you could say nervous, I guess, would be a fairer way to say it.
But prosecutors say this grainy FBI aerial surveillance video will show Rittenhouse did move toward Rosenbaum, while the defense says it shows Rosenbaum hid behind cars before chasing Rittenhouse, who opened fire. The most graphic of the videos showing the moment Rosenbaum was shot 4 times. And shortly after, when he was carried by bystanders and driven away, a detective confirming Rosenbaum was unarmed.
So no gun?
No.
No knife?
No.
No bat?
No.
No club?
No.
Rittenhouse, who has pleaded not guilty, appeared to look down during some of the most dramatic video, which included the moment he shot 2 more people, killing 26-year-old Anthony Huber and injuring Gage Grosskreutz. The case appears to rest on each side's portrayal of Rittenhouse's intent, the prosecution saying in opening statements that Rittenhouse acted as a vigilante igniting fear in a crowd after shooting an unarmed man.
And as he's running, word spreads from the crowd on the street that there is an active shooter running through the area. And the citizens there attempt to stop him.
Rittenhouse's attorneys argue self-defense and that he only fired his rifle after he was attacked.
The other individuals who didn't see that shooting attacked him in the street like an animal.
Outside of testimony, Judge Bruce Schrader is in the spotlight for his unusual style.
Good thing we have the Jeopardy game for us to practice.
Playing Jeopardy with jurors during courtroom downtime and referencing the Bible during a hearsay objection in court.
And this is actually referred to in the Bible. St. Paul, when he was put on trial.
Adrian Broadus, CNN, Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Okay, Adrian Broadus, thank you very much. I'm going to bring in now CNN senior legal analyst Ellie Honig. Ellie, thank you so much. Good evening to you. So I want to start with the video that jurors saw that shows another person firing a gunshot in the air just seconds before Rittenhouse fatally shot Joseph Rosenbaum. Rittenhouse's legal team clearly trying to use that in their self-defense argument. Do you think that will be effective?
It could be, Don. So the key concept here is reasonableness. Was Kyle Rittenhouse in reasonable belief that his life was in immediate danger? If so, under Wisconsin self-defense law, he was entitled to use lethal force to shoot somebody. Look, it's better for Kyle Rittenhouse's defense that somebody else fired that first shot than he did. And I think the argument you could see from Rittenhouse's defense team is he didn't know where that shot come from. He was reasonable in concluding that the person who was chasing him fired that shot. Therefore, he was reasonable in turning around and returning fire. That could be one of the self-defense arguments that you hear. And an important thing to keep in mind, under Wisconsin law, self-defense is a difficult defense for prosecutors, and it's easier for the defendant than in other states. In the majority of states, if a defendant argues self-defense, all he has to do is show that his actions were reasonable. But in Wisconsin, the prosecution has to show beyond a reasonable doubt that it was unreasonable. So this is going to be a tough one for prosecutors.
Just real quick before, wasn't he not old enough to legally own a gun or carry a gun?
Correct. Yes, he was 17 years old. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So the lot of video shown today was graphic. It was hard to watch. How does seeing something like that weigh on a jury's mind?
Yeah, Don, it's one of the key challenges that a jury has. The jury will be told and has been told, you are to take all the emotion out of this. You are to take the politics out of this. You are to make a cold, rational decision about reasonableness. And to your point about the age, Don, that will be an important point that the prosecution will make. First of all, one of the charges, one of the lesser charges against Rittenhouse here is that he was unlawfully, as a minor, in possession of a firearm. He's inarguably essentially guilty of that. There's some defense that there's some hunting law that would allow him to hold a gun. I don't think that's going anywhere. But there's an important concept here, provocation. If the prosecution can show that Kyle Rittenhouse created the dangerous scenario, then his self-defense claim will fail. And so prosecutors are going to argue, here you have this kid, he illegally gets a gun, he has someone else buy it for him, he crosses a state line, drives 30 minutes into Kenosha, and then he patrols the streets. And as they've argued to the jury, there were hundreds of people there that night. Only
Wireless family plans save you.
Piece of evidence today in Kyle Rittenhouse's murder trial. It's footage of a man named Joseph Rosenbaum chasing Rittenhouse and throwing a plastic bag at him. Then moments later, Rittenhouse shoots and kills him. When people in the crowd pursue Rittenhouse, he shoots two of them, killing one. Let's look at this. Here's the video frozen just before he throws that bag. There's Rittenhouse on the left side running away, and Rosenbaum holding the bag with his arm raised. See there? Rittenhouse did not fire the first shot you're about to hear. That was fired into the air by another protester. But he did fire the four that you hear after. Here we go.
Oh, we got a gun, baby. Oh, they shot him.
Rittenhouse's lawyers say that first shot made their client think he was under attack. It's a critical piece of evidence when the central question in the whole trial is, whether Rittenhouse was acting in self-defense.
Marked as exhibit number 73. Is this that footage that you're referring to?
It appears so.
Okay. Will you please play that for the jury? Detective, just to help everybody understand, that was footage taken from a position south of the 63rd car source lot looking north into the lot. Would that be roughly accurate to say?
Yeah, it'd be right around that area.
For the jury? Marked as exhibit number 73. Is this that footage that you're referring to?
It appears so.
Okay. Will you please play that for the jury?
then comes out from the area by the two cars. And when Mr. Rittenhouse passes him, he then comes out from the area by the two cars and is now back traveling this way, right?
Once the white dot is south of those cars, the blue dot appears to come north-northeast slightly, then continue southbound.
And Kelly Zeminski and her husband are right there, correct?
When you say right there, they're the green and pink dot, I would say.
Yeah. So they're right next to, or the two closest people to Mr. Rittenhouse and Mr. Rosenbaum, right?
At that time, it appears so, yes.
Okay. Did you hear, I don't know if it's been played yet, did you hear a portion of a tape? So we know Kyle Rittenhouse says, or you believe that you hear friendly, friendly, friendly. That's been discussed, right?
I haven't said that, but it's been said, yes.
What also was testified to by Detective Howard was gun, gun, gun. You see Mr. Rosenbaum then chase Mr.
And did you get a chance to look at it at home?
A little bit.
Did you were you able to zoom in and look at details of the defendant's actions in that video?
Yes.
What did you see?
So it appears that when the defendant comes around what we've been referring to as the Duramax vehicle, he deliberately...
So Howard did as well?
Correct.
Did any of the subsequent investigation you did, any of the...
I don't know enough about it to say that that's the textbook definition, but it's definitely indicative of proximity to a fired gun.
Based on your investigation, Joseph Rosenbaum had stippling on his body, correct?
Correct.
Why did you see him as a threat?
Get assaulted, he had a brick thrown at his head. And I saw the mattress store owner get knocked out, and I believe his jaw was broken and had to be wired shut or something.
And you saw all of that on the 24th?
Yes.
Did you go to downtown Kenosha at that time and try and do anything about that?
No, I did not.
Directing your attention to the late morning of August 25th, 2020, did you have occasion to go downtown?
I did go to downtown in the morning of August 25th.
Who did you go there with?
I went there with Dominic Black, my sister Mackenzie Rittenhouse, and Ray Dickhart.
And describe what you did.
We walked around for a little bit, and then I believe at around 11:30 noon, we ended up at Ruther Central High School, where we ended up cleaning graffiti for about
I want to say an hour and a half to 2 hours.
He is saying he wished he did so he could shoot people. You know, there's a lot of difference between commenting about something when you haven't got a gun and threatening someone when you do.
You know, it's interesting, Your Honor, because the entire defense theory in this case is Joseph Rosenbaum, who was unarmed.
I want you to tell me what the defense theory of the case is. I want.
May I respond to what you just said, Your Honor? I'd like to respond to what you just said. I apologize, Madam Court Reporter, but I'd like to try and make a record without anyone interrupting me, if that's okay. I believe that there is a central part of this case that Mr. Rosenbaum is making threats that he has no ability to carry out. So, to your point, Your Honor, you're arguing that this August 10th incident, one aspect of why you don't believe it's relevant is the defendant didn't have the gun with him. This case is about someone who didn't have a weapon, and yet the jury is being told because of those threats, that means the defendant has to defend himself. So, with all due respect, Your Honor, mere verbal threats have already been shown to this jury and used as a basis for someone's subsequent actions. I am attempting with the defendant to use his mere verbal threat on August 10th, 15 days prior, that he's going to shoot shoplifters with his AR-15 to impeach the defendant in a murder trial. I would ask the court's forbearance to do that. I apologize, Your Honor. You're right. I probably should have brought this to your attention earlier. I may have misunderstood your ruling because I thought your ruling was if the evidence in this case made that more relevant, you would admit it or at least consider it an admittance. I believe, based on the evidence that we've heard, and more specifically exactly what the defendant said earlier about admitting pointing a gun at someone who was merely jumping or sitting on a car, that the door is open now to this testimony. And I continue to believe that his state of mind, his intent, his belief as to self-defense is the core of this case. That was the basis for my motion. You were strongly inclined against it. I understand that. But now we're in the...
Had it wrapped around his face.
Had what wrapped around his face?
His t-shirt.
So he wasn't wearing a shirt the second time around?
Correct.
And... Correct? Aggressive to you, did he?
Not yet.
In that video, you indicate that you have your AR-15 to protect yourself, correct?
Yes.
And you indicate that you're going to run out there and treat anyone who needs medical help, correct?
Yes.
Were you going to bring the gun along when you did that?
Yes.
To defend yourself while you're treating someone?
If I needed to defend myself while treating somebody, yes.
If you didn't think there was friction with the crowd and you're out there trying to help, why did you expect there'd be any danger?
From the previous nights when I saw people being assaulted.
Were they medics being assaulted?
I don't know who they were. I know one of them was just trying to put out a fire at his business.
So you saw someone put out a fire, who was trying to put out a fire, who got assaulted?
Yes.
But if you're going to help people, why would you expect anyone would try and hurt you?
I don't know. Somebody did try to hurt me, and I was helping people.
Well, you're talking about later on.
Yes.
Okay, but at this moment in time, this is before the shootings.
Yes.
This is before you cross 60th, before you deal with Rosenbaum, Huber, Grosskreutz, all that, right?
Yes.
So at this moment in time, you don't think there's a hostile crowd, you're there to help people, and yet you're going to run out there with the AR-15. I don't understand why you felt that you were going to be in danger if you're out in what you think is a friendly crowd, helping them.
I didn't say I didn't think they were hostile. I didn't think they were hostile towards us.
Okay, so they're not hostile to you and you're going to go help them. Why do you need the gun when you go out there?
I need the gun because if I had to protect myself because somebody attacked me.
Why would you think anybody would do that?
I don't know.
But you clearly planned on it. You were prepared for it. You thought it was going to happen.
No, I didn't.
That's the whole reason you brought the gun, isn't it?
I brought the gun to protect myself.
Exactly. Because you thought you personally were going to be in danger, right?
Not necessarily.
I don't understand. You said you're going to bring the gun to protect yourself. So you thought you were going to be in danger, right?
I didn't think I would be put into a situation where I would have to defend myself.
You said that the people around you on that property and the people up on the roof were there to protect you. That's what you said in the video, right?
Yes.
You meant when you go out in the crowd, they're going to protect you, right?
Watch over me, yes.
Watch over and protect you, right?
Yes.
Again, because you expected that if you go out in that crowd to try and provide medical service, you thought you were going to get attacked?
They were to watch me. They were on the roof to watch me, and if somebody was to attack me in their view, they could say, "Hey, Kyle, watch out."
They've got AR-15s.
Yes.
We talked earlier about the fact that the AR-15, you can't use deadly force to protect the building, right?
Correct.
The AR-15 was to protect you, right? That's what you just said.
Not the AR-15. I said they could shout down to me and be like, "Hey, Kyle, watch out."
So they're just carrying around the AR-15s for no reason?
I don't know why they're carrying around the AR-15s.
Can we play exhibit? This is the end. At the end of this video is where you invite Mr. McGinnis to follow you and Ryan Balch, correct?
Yes.
And you invited him to do that because you want, I think you said on, when your attorney was asking you questions, that you wanted him to film you while you were out in the crowd doing your thing. Fair?
I said it was okay for him to film me.
Let's play exhibit 17, please. Just asked you, so you're a certified EMT, and you said yes, correct?
Yes.
That was a lie, correct?
I'm not an EMT.
You're not a certified EMT. You're not an EMT of any kind. You weren't on that night, correct?
Yes.
So you lied to him, correct?
I told him I was an EMT, but I wasn't.
And you knew you were being interviewed by someone in the media when you told that lie, didn't you?
Yes.
Please continue.
And you work as an EMT normally?
Can we back up 10 seconds, please? And then just pause right there. We just heard a voice say something to you, Mr. Balch, about people throwing rocks or something along those lines. I don't really need to know exactly what they said, but did you hear that voice?
The police officer from the Bearcat, yes.
That's what I was going to ask. That's one of the law enforcement officers in that armored vehicle that you're walking past, correct?
Yes.
And this, what we're watching in this video happens a few minutes after those same Bearcats had come to the 59th Street property and handed you water, correct?
Yes.
And they say to you something to the effect of, "We appreciate you guys." Do you remember that?
I do.
That's when you were on the 59th Street property and you were acting like you were guarding that property, correct?
Yes.
So how did it make you feel when the police are letting you pass the lines, they're warning you about people throwing rocks, they're handing out bottles of water, they're telling you that they appreciate you? How'd that make you feel?
I didn't really care. I was thankful for the water because I had OC stuff, gas in my eyes, but I didn't really notice or care.
It didn't make you feel like they approved of what you were doing?
No.
It didn't make you feel like you're emboldened now to go out there and act on their behalf?
No.
Let's play the video here, please. Pause. You yelled something friendly. I'm not sure how many times, but you yelled friendly out.
Yes.
This is, if I can use the pointer, you are crossing on the west side of Sheridan Road. You are crossing south across 60th Street here, heading across the police line, which had barricaded across 60th and Sheridan. Fair?
Yes.
You understood at this moment that you are now entering a crowd of whatever you want to call them, protesters, demonstrators. Your attorneys called them rioters or looters or whatever. That's who you're going to now be part of. You're going to be in that crowd, right?
I was walking through. I announced myself as friendly and that I was there to help them.
Because you had to do that to warn these people that, hey, I'm on your side, right?
I told them that I was friendly.
Because if you didn't say that, you were worried they would see you as hostile, correct?
Can you re-ask your question? I'm trying to
Absolutely.
understand.
If you're going to go up to Dominic Black or Ryan Balch, you don't need to tell them you're friendly because they know that you're friends, right? We don't tell this to our friends.
Yeah.
We say friendly to people that aren't our friends, people that might be hostile to us, right?
Yeah, I said it to them because they were throwing rocks at me, and when I told them I was friendly, they stopped throwing rocks at us.
And to be accurate, they were throwing at the Bearcats, not at you.
Yeah.
One of them hit one of the armored vehicles and bounced off towards you and Mr. Balch, right?
Yeah.
It didn't do any damage to that armored vehicle, did it?
Not that I'm aware of.
I mean, can you imagine trying to harm an armored vehicle with a rock? That's pretty hard to do, right?
Yeah.
But no one was throwing rocks at you, but you were kind of in the ricochet line of fire. It's fair to say?
Yeah.
So you wanted to let these people know that, hey, I might look like I'm on the other side, but I'm really friendly. Fair?
I wasn't on any side, but...
I didn't say that. I said that you might appear to them. I mean, that was what you were worried about, right? When you said friendly? And I notice you looking over at your attorney a lot. Can you... I'm trying to ask you. When you are doing...
He's looking directly at Mr. Binger, and I'm behind him. He accused Mr. Rittenhouse of looking at his attorney. Does he want him to look at the ceiling?
I'll continue, Your Honor. You, at this very moment, announced yourself as friendly because you were worried that the people on the other side of that street would see you as hostile. Fair?
I can't tell you how I think they would see me, but I just told them I was friendly.
And I want to make sure you understand my question, because I was asking you what you thought when you said this. You said you announced yourself as friendly because you thought to yourself at that very moment, I'm walking into a group that is hostile to me. Isn't that true?
It looked hostile. They were throwing rocks at the squad car, not the squad cars, the armored police cars.
And you felt it was necessary to tell them friendly, 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 so that they wouldn't do anything to you. Fair?
Yes.
Let's continue the video. There's a person that comes up to you carrying a skateboard. Do you see that?
I do.
And he's got some fire extinguishers slung over his shoulder?
Yes.
And he says something to you about something putting out fires, and you respond, they know. Did I understand what you said correctly there? They know?
That's what I just heard, but I don't remember that interaction very well, other than helping the guy after with the shoulder.
And that's going to come up in a second here, but when you're talking to this individual about the fire extinguishers, do you remember anything about that conversation?
It's hard to recall, but I think it was about fires, that they were putting out fires.
Okay. And when you said they know, who's they?
I don't recall.
Do you have any idea what you were talking about?
I don't.
It seems to me, Mr. Rittenhouse, that this person is suggesting he's going to go put out some fires, and you're sort of assuring him that you don't need to, it's okay. Would that be a fair interpretation or no?
No.
But you don't remember what was going on?
I don't remember the conversation, what was about, other than fires, and I don't recall it.
This is one of the guys in the group that you later got your fire extinguisher from, right?
No.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Let's continue. Brian, can you continue?
Well, everyone never heard nobody. Still spicy, that's all. Solid. I think someone got the medical weed, I'll tell you that.
You're walking around asking people if they need medical. And you talked earlier about treating a couple, I don't know, somebody at the 59th Street car source, right?
Minor injuries.
Minor injuries. When you were walking around outside that property, when you're out in the street announcing what you're announcing, did anybody respond and say, yeah, I need help from you?
Yes.
When was that?
I don't recall an exact time, but somebody cut their finger open and I gave them some gauze and some bandage tape.
Was that before or after this? Do you remember?
Before.
Where physically did that happen?
I don't recall.
And was this a situation where you announced or yelled out that you could help, and then somebody said, "Yeah, I need some help"? Was that what went on in that situation?
Yes.
As you're walking along here, from this point until the end, till you shoot Rosenbaum and Huber and Grosskreutz, no one in this crowd ever says to you, "Yeah, I do need medical. Come over and help me." Correct?
Yes.
That's correct?
Yes.
Okay. Let's continue. This is the individual who accuses you of pointing your gun at them, right?
Yes.
And he says that you did so when he was on a vehicle, right?
Yes.
And in fact, he had been at the 59th Street car source location, climbing on, sitting on, jumping on one of the vehicles in that lot, hadn't he?
Not that I'm aware of. I know I heard Joanne Fiedler testify to that, but I don't remember seeing him at that location.
But he accuses you of that here.
He does.
And you tell him, basically, yeah, I did point the gun at you, right?
I shrugged it off and said, yeah, I did, sarcastically. meaning I didn't, but I just didn't want a confrontation, so I was like, I did, and walked away.
Why did you lie to him?
I didn't lie to him. I was using sarcasm.
The words you said, yeah, I did. Those weren't true, were they?
We're now fighting over sarcasm. This is a murder trial.
Go ahead.
When you told that individual, yeah, I did, point a gun at you, that wasn't true, was it?
I didn't point a gun at him.
So why did you react to him that way in that particular moment?
I thought that would be the best way to avoid conflict. I just said, yeah, I did, sarcastically, like, I don't know what you're talking about.
What conflict were you trying to avoid?
Any conflict, if he would have got, like, he was accusing me of something I didn't do, so I thought the best thing the best thing to do would be to walk away instead of getting into some argument. So,
but you didn't just walk away. You said to him sarcastically, yeah, I did.
I said sarcastically, I did, and walked away.
Because you were worried about a conflict. What conflict were you worried about?
A verbal argument.
This individual is clearly expressing to you that he's unhappy because he thought you pointed your gun at him, correct?
Yes.
And you can understand why someone would be upset when you point an AR-15 at them, correct?
Yes.
You knew that even before this, right?
Yes.
In fact, back at the 59th Street car source, that crowd that you've described as not having any friction, many in that crowd got upset because they thought people in your group were pointing their laser pointers at them. Do you remember that?
I saw it in the videos, but I don't know what other people were doing.
I'm not saying anybody actually was. I'm saying the crowd was upset, and you knew that. You heard them complaining, correct?
Watching the videos, yes.
And even at that time, that night, you heard the crowd upset because they thought members of your group were pointing their laser pointers at them. Do you remember that from that night?
Sorta, yes or no. I remember Ryan Balch saying something like telling the people to stop pointing their lasers at people or something. I don't really remember that.
Ryan Balch was telling the people in your group to stop doing that.
The people on the roof
who were part of your group, right?
That were there, yes.
So you know, when we're talking about laser pointers, we're talking about the sight at the end of some guns that helps, almost like this, right? If somebody does this at me, you know, that could be someone pointing a gun, correct?
It could be seen as that.
And that's what the crowd was complaining about, right?
Yeah.
So you knew from that crowd incident, and you certainly knew from this incident, that when people have guns pointed at them, it can really escalate the situation, correct?
Yeah, I don't think anybody had lasers on their guns. I think.
Yeah, but let's go back to your group at 59th Street, because you actually didn't know any of those people other than Dominic and Nick Smith, right?
Yes.
You had just met Ryan Balch for the first time 3 or 4 hours before this video, right?
Yeah.
You had just met Jason Lakowski for the first time, just actually only a few minutes before this, right? Because he didn't get in until 10:45.
Correct.
So at this point in the video, I don't know, this is probably about 11:30 or so at night.
I met him about 35 minutes prior to that.
And probably had only spent, what, 10, 15 minutes at all in the same location as Jason Lakowski before you walk south?
Yes.
So, again, Jason Lakowski was someone you'd never met before that night.
Correct.
And you barely spent any time with him that night, correct?
Correct.
And, of course, the people up on the roof, other than Dominic Black and Nick Smith, you didn't know any of them before that night either, correct?
I knew Dominic Black and Nick Smith, but the people on...
I misspoke their names.
Sorry.
Dominic Black and Nick Smith.
I knew those are the two people I knew on the roof.
Other than that, you didn't know anyone else before this night. Fair?
Correct.
Now, when this little interaction that we've just watched happens, You're still walking with Ryan Balch, aren't you?
I'm not. I thought I was at the time, but seeing hindsight view, I'm not.
When you decided to cross 60th with Ryan Balch, you two talked about the fact that if you get separated, to go back to the 59th Street car source, right?
I don't recall that conversation happening.
But you tried to do that, didn't you?
I did.
Because you felt like if I'm out here by myself, that's not good. I need to head back, right?
Yes.
And you also talked to Ryan Balch about the fact that when you get out into this crowd, keep your mouth shut. Don't antagonize them. Didn't Ryan talk to you about that?
No, we didn't talk about that.
So at this very moment, you're telling us you've lost track of Ryan Balch.
A little bit ahead, but around that time, yes.
Let's continue the video.
Well, yesterday, today.
Pause. You have just walked off the screen, heading east across Sheridan Road to the Ultimate gas station, correct?
Yes.
And at that point in time, you don't know where Ryan Balch is, correct?
When I stop and look around, yes.
And instead of deciding to head back at this point, you go over to Ultimate Gas and you talk to some folks over there. Fair?
I walk over to the Ultimate gas station, I walk around, and I try to see if I can find Mr. Balch.
And you couldn't do that?
No.
So then you decided to approach the police line and cross back, correct?
Yes.
Because you decided your best course of action at that point would be to return to the same group that you'd been with, correct?
Yes.
Now, at that moment in time, the police had pushed everybody south of 60th, right?
Sorta. I don't really know if there were...
Say south of 60th?
I said south of 60th. Let's go back a little bit. We watched that interview with Richie McGinnis where he first comes up to you and talks to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you're standing there at the 59th Street property, aren't you?
I am.
And he talks to you about what you're going to do, and you're going to run out and help people, things like that, right?
Yes.
At that point, the police had already passed with all the Bearcats and MRAPs and armored vehicles, right?
It's what it looks like, yes.
And they had established a line on 60th and Sheridan, correct?
Yes.
And they pushed all of the protesters, demonstrators, rioters, whatever you want to call them, all of them south of 60th, correct?
I don't know if I can honestly answer all of them. I don't know. I believe there are some people still north down Sheridan and in the put across the street.
So were there, I mean, we saw a crowd earlier of lots of protesters out in the street. That group, the numbers had dwindled quite a bit.
Yes.
Okay. So after the police move everybody south of 60th, there's no more actual threat to the 59th Street car source, is there?
I don't know.
Well, at that moment in time, what imminent threats did you see to the 59th Street car source property?
I don't know.
Do you remember seeing any protesters out in the street in front of the 59th Street car source after the police pushed everybody south of 60th?
I believe there were some across the street, but not many. I can't recall completely.
And that was just 2 or 3 people, right?
I don't know how many people.
None of those people came across the street to the 59th Street car source, did they?
I don't know. If they did, I would have walked off by now.
So you didn't see them come across the street?
I did not.
Fair to say that after the police pushed everybody south of 60th, you never saw any people threatening that property, correct?
I didn't see anybody.
And your goal that night, you took it upon yourself to protect the 59th Street property, correct?
The owners asked.
Sure. But you were going to station yourself at that property to try and protect it from damage. Fair?
The car source locations, yes.
And once the police had pushed everybody south of that, there was no more danger.
At that car source location, yes.
Okay. So Why not go home at that point?
Because the police were still pushing people back, and then they were backing up, and I was still helping people provide medical first aid.
Okay, so the police had established the line at 60th with their Bearcats at that point, right?
Yes.
And there was no indication that they were going to reverse and back up and move back north again that you saw, correct?
No, they did it earlier in the night where they did the same thing.
Right, but this is at 11:30, 11:40 at night, and they've established that, the police have established that line, and as far as you can tell, it's going to stay there, right?
I don't know.
And you talked about trying to provide medical help, but there's no one around that needs medical help at the 59th Street car source at that point, is there?
Not that I noticed.
So you don't have any purpose there anymore, do you?
Other than...
So why not go home?
Because I was going to help people provide first aid and medical assistance.
But that wasn't the reason you were there that night. You were there that night to protect the
All
59th
right.
Street car source.
Sorry, Meg was on a Zoom call.
It was one
forever.
of the reasons I was there.
So, this has been fun. Look,
of being there was
it's not your
protect
fault.
the car
It's your
source
dumbass client's fault.
properties
But
and
it is
provide
like
first
after
aid
7
medical
o'clock,
assistance.
and I got to
So
get this
you went
woman
out
some
in the
food
crowd.
because she's going to be hangry.
You see in this video.
Hangry.
For anyone
And we
who
got to
needs
run out.
If
Work
somebody
related crap.
asked
But
that if
this
somebody
chat was
said
fun.
they need
Tell you what,
help,
I'm just
I
going to leave
would've
live
helped
stream
them.
up, and you guys can just keep on
So-
chatting at it. And I'll leave this guy in the
Why go
background
with
because
Ryan
why not?
Walsh?
Some people may not have seen it.
Because you're safer and
But
better in pairs.
I'll
when
check in when I
there's
get back
somebody
and
else
see.
that's also
Let's see what I
with
missed.
you.
So
Thank
when
you guys for
crossed
coming
60th,
by,
You were worried about your safety.
chatting with me.
A little
Normally
bit.
I do talk the whole time, but
Even though
she's got a
you
shit
think
show
this is not a
work
hostile
situation
crowd
happening over
and you're
here.
there to help
She's
them,
using my studio.
we're still worried about your
so-
safety. That's
No
why you needed
chat.
Balch to back you up.
It's all good though.
Right?
I said I didn't think they were hostile towards me.
But
I didn't
we
say
got to get
that
out of
they
here because it's
weren't a
7:20,
hostile crowd.
and we got to do something.
So let me rephrase my
So
question
I'll see y'all later.
to take that into account. You didn't think this was a crowd that was hostile to you personally, and you thought you were going to help them, but yet you also felt you needed a backup, an armed former Army infantryman to protect you. Fair?
Yes.
And yet when he's gone and you can't find him, you don't immediately go back, right?
I looked for him for a second, and then I think max I looked for him for like 3 minutes, and then I tried to go back.
And when you couldn't get back straight across the police lines, did you decide to try and go around the police lines? For example, the Ultimate gas station is here at 60th and Sheridan. Why didn't you walk down the street here and go over this way and around?
I don't know.
Why didn't you go west over this way and go around?
I don't know. I guess it was very close in time that I was heading back. That I was turned down by the police before I got the phone call from Dominic Black. So I guess I didn't have time to really think like which ways I can go around.
You knew the layout of downtown Kenosha, right? Because you said you drove that area the whole time, right?
Little bit.
So you go over to the Ultimate gas station and you spend some time talking with folks that are there who are similarly dressed as you. They've got similar clothing, similar weapon, things like that, right?
Similar weapons. I wouldn't say similarly dressed.
But you went over there because you felt that those were people doing something similar to what you were doing that night. Fair?
I thought that would be the safest spot for me to go.
Why did you think you'd be safe with those people?
Because I was alone, and they were, like I said, you're better in pairs, and I didn't want to be alone in that situation.
You didn't want to be alone out here with this crowd that we see on the screen right now.
I
Right?
did not want to be alone with them.
You wanted to be with the group at Ultimate Gas that had AR-15s like you, right?
I wanted to be back at the car source where there weren't people around.
Right, and we've talked about that, but initially you go to Ultimate Gas
To look for Ryan, yes.
but you also talk to people who have AR-15s just like you, right?
I wouldn't say I talked to them. I asked after the phone call. I asked the guy for a fire extinguisher to come with me.
Let's play exhibit number 11 at the 54-minute and 30-second mark. This is the Corey Elijah live stream when he's in the Ultimate Gas lot. Mr. Rittenhouse, that's Ryan Balch standing there in the Ultimate Gas lot, correct?
Yes.
Let's play this video.
Fireworks look down there.
I don't know.
We just saw you run through this video, correct?
Yes.
I started this video at the 54-minute and 30-second mark. It is now paused at the 54-minute and 56-second mark. So for 26 seconds, Corey Elijah has Ryan Balch on screen, center of this video during that entire time, right?
Yes.
And you run right past where Corey Elijah is standing, right?
Yes.
And Ryan Balch is loitering there in the middle of the screen for at least 26 seconds, right?
That's what it looks like on the screen.
And your testimony is you were trying your best to find Ryan Balch at the Ultimate Gas Station at this point because you needed him to protect you?
I was looking for Ryan Balch, but I didn't notice him as I was running away, running towards Car Source 3.
But for 26 seconds before you start running, he's standing right there, isn't he?
Yes, and when he's standing right there, before I run with the fire extinguisher, I'm over here on the phone with Dominic Black.
How long was your phone call with Dominic Black?
About 30 seconds.
So before that, you'd been looking for Ryan Balch?
Before that, I tried to get back to the car source lot number 1.
And you'd also been looking for Ryan Balch?
Seeing if I could see him in the crowd of people.
Because you wanted a partner, a buddy, to protect you?
To protect each other, yes.
And in fact, when you borrowed that fire extinguisher, you asked someone in that group to come along with you, right?
Yes.
Because you wanted someone there to protect you when you go down and put out what you think are some fires, right?
Yes.
Because you know that you're running into a crowd that is not friendly to you, right?
No.
That's why you had to say the word friendly, 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 because you knew this was a crowd that would not see you as friendly, correct?
I screamed friendly, friendly, friendly because somebody screamed burn inside.
I'm talking about when you crossed 60th. You yelled it then.
At that time, yes, but...
And no one in the crowd is yelling burn inside or anything along those lines, are they?
Not at that time.
And you also wanted someone from that group to come along with you when you're going to go down and put out a fire because you knew full well that anyone running around like you putting fires out is going to cause a reaction in the crowd, a hostile reaction, correct?
I didn't think it would cause a negative reaction. I wanted somebody to come with me because you're better in pairs, and I thought there were other people at that car source before I got there.
Well, Dominic, if you're telling us that Dominic Black called you to run 3 blocks down the road to put out a fire at the 63rd Street car source, then you must have known at that moment that there wasn't anyone else down there, right? Why would you need to go if somebody's already down there?
Mr. Black said to me on the phone, "Hey, they're setting fires at the other car source. I need you to get down there, put out the fires." It must not have, I don't think it, I took it as there's not other people down there.
Why would you need to go 3 blocks down if there were already people there?
To help.
He's asking a question. This witness doesn't know the answer, whether there are people there or not.
He's told us he thought there were. So I'm probing the basis of that and his understanding at the time. I'll repeat the question. Why would you need to run 3 blocks down to the 63rd car source if you thought there were already people there?
I thought there were people there, but Dominic asked me to go down there. I thought that was to help put out the fires that were down there.
This video that we're watching is minutes after you've left the 59th Street car source, right?
Yes.
And when you leave the 59th Street car source, you're with Ryan Balch.
Yes.
And then this reporter, Richie McGinnis.
Yes.
And as far as you know, when you leave 59th Street car source, everybody in your group is still back there, right?
At the car source.
At 59th Street car source.
Yes.
Everybody's still back there.
Yes.
Joanne Fiedler.
Yes.
Dustin Collette. Dominic Black. Nick Smith. Jason Lakowski. Anyone else. They're all still there, right?
At that location, yes.
So none of your group is already down at 63rd Street car source, right?
The other group that showed up after we got done taking the pictures with the, I think I said 2 or 3 vans, I believe they were still down there.
And that was 2 or 3 vans of people that came out with what have been described as melee weapons, right? Like bats and clubs and things like that. Do you recall that? First of all, do you recall that testimony?
I do.
Do you remember seeing those 2 or 3 vans come to that location?
I do.
Do you remember seeing people get out of those vans?
Yes, like I saw, I think there were 6 people, they, in total.
And you saw them with weapons?
I saw them with rifles. I don't think I remember melee weapons.
They were armed, correct?
Yes.
And you believed that they were going to be the ones protecting the 63rd Street car source, correct?
Yes.
So at this point in time in the evening, had anybody told you that those folks had left the 63rd Street car source?
No.
So when you're running with this fire extinguisher, you think there's already a group that's designated to that spot that's still down there, right?
Yes.
So again, why do you feel that you needed to run 3 blocks down there with a fire extinguisher if you thought there were already people down there protecting that property?
Because Dominic called me and asked me to go help put out the fires down there.
And in that phone call, Dominic never told you that any of the members of the 59th Street group that you were part of, he never said any of them were down there at 63rd, right?
Yes.
And he never told you that the group that was supposed to be down there, he never told you anything about them, whether they were there or not there. He never mentioned that. Fair?
It didn't come up.
And you asked the people that you got the fire extinguisher from to come with you, right?
Yes.
You were looking for Ryan Balch for backup, right?
I was looking around for him, yes.
You had already tried to go back to the 59th Street location, right?
Yes.
And all of those failed.
Yes.
So then you decide to take it upon yourself to head down to 63rd Street to put out fires. Fair?
I wouldn't say that. I would say I went to go put out the fires that I was there to do. When I say protect the property, I mean by like put out fires. So I went to go put out the fires. I just believe there were people there.
And you brought your AR-15 along?
Yes.
Why?
Because it was with me already.
Yeah, but you'd taken it off earlier when you were treating someone. You gave it to Joanne Fiedler, right?
Yes.
So you know how to take it off, don't you?
Yes.
And you can make a choice on your own whether or not to go armed with it or whether to give it to the person who is the lawful owner of it on that date, Dominic Black, correct?
I didn't take my rifle off there because there was nobody I could hand it to. And when I took it off to hand it to Joanne Fiedler, I was in a safe spot in that corner of the building where there were people protecting me at that time right there. When I went to go to the car source number 3 to put out the fires, there was nobody I could hand my rifle to that could protect me while I'm providing first aid to somebody.
But you still knew you had it.
My rifle, yes.
You still knew you had it strapped around your body.
Yes.
And you made a conscious decision to bring it along, right?
Yes.
Why? He gave an answer about how he already had it, and we go through on that. So,
Did you hear the question?
I did, but I don't really understand what.
well, was it simply that, well, I've already got it strapped on, so I might as well bring it along? Is that what you're telling us? You decided to bring along the AR-15 because, well, I've already got it? Is that your answer?
I don't think I was thinking like, hey, I'm going to take my rifle off. I wouldn't have because there was people around that could have stolen my gun, and I didn't. I didn't take my rifle off because I was going there alone. I was going to be running there alone, and I didn't take it off because no one else was there to protect me as I was going there, so that's why I brought it.
For protection?
Yes.
You brought it along down there because you felt like you would need to protect yourself against someone else harming you, correct?
If that would have happened, I would have protected myself, but I didn't think I was going to be attacked and ambushed.
But you just said you had it for protection. What were you expecting you would need protection from?
I thought we had covered much of this before.
I'm specifically focusing in on the time period where he is heading down to the 63rd Street car source. I have not asked him about this yet, Your Honor.
Well, go ahead, but you need to pick up the pace somewhat.
When you decided to bring your AR-15 loaded with 30 rounds down to the 63rd Street car source location, what did you think you needed protection against?
I didn't really think I was going to have to protect myself.
You told us just now you brought it along for protection.
I did, but I didn't think I was going to need to protect myself.
You brought it along for protection, but you didn't think you needed protection? I'm trying to clarify the two different answers that I think he just gave, Your Honor.
Well, go ahead. Do
you understand the question?
Not really.
I asked you why you brought the gun. You said you needed it for protection. I said, protection against what? You said you didn't think you needed protection. I'm confused. Can you help me understand why you're telling us you needed a gun for protection, but you didn't think you needed protection?
I brought the gun for my protection, but what I was saying is I didn't think I would have to use the gun and end up defending myself.
So you, in this video, are running.
Yes.
You run across the screen. Yes?
Yes.
And then I think you testified on direct that as you made it down the block, I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but you stopped running and you walked for a little while. Is that right?
I jogged and walked occasionally.
Carrying the fire extinguisher and your gun.
Yes.
And you're alone at that point with no backup, right?
Yes.
And you testified that when you got down to the 63rd Street car source, you indicated that you came upon that vehicle we've been calling the Duramax. You know what vehicle I'm talking about?
I do.
And you indicated that when you got there, you walked around that vehicle and you saw a person that you now know to be Joshua Zeminski. Is that right?
I walked up to the Duramax. Yes.
You didn't know Joshua Zeminski's name at that point, correct?
No.
You hadn't taken any notice of him at all up until that moment, all night long. Fair?
Fair.
This is the first time that you see that this is a person that comes to your attention. Fair?
Yes.
And you said he had a gun in his hand.
Yes.
And you put the fire extinguisher down on the ground.
I dropped the fire extinguisher.
And then you hear or see Mr. Rosenbaum coming from behind you.
When I get to the Duramax, I step forward, and then Mr. Zeminski turns towards me, and he steps towards me. I drop the fire extinguisher, step back, and that's when I see. I go to run back towards 59th Street.
And Mr. Rosenbaum is coming.
And then that's when I notice Mr. Rosenbaum running at me, leaving me with no other, right? Mr. Zeminski in front of me with the gun. Mrs. Zeminski right there, a couple feet away, and then some other people there.
And then the chase happens. Is that
Yes.
fair to say?
Yes.
Have you told us everything that you did when that situation just happened at the Duramax?
Yes.
Can we play the iPad, please? The iPad with the drone video. This is exhibit number 73. What are you guys going to do? Mr. Rittenhouse, this is a video that has been admitted into evidence as exhibit number 73. This is a video taken by a drone that was hovering south of 63rd at the time that you shot Mr. Rosenbaum. We're going to play the beginning of this video on the iPad, and I'm going to have Detective Howard use the pinch and zoom feature on the iPad to zoom in on the area.
Your Honor, I'm going to check this, and I'd like to be heard outside the presence of the jury.
What do you think? Perfect time for a break, don't you think? Let's take a break. Please don't talk about the case during the break. Read, watch, or listen to any account of the trial. What's up?
Your Honor.
Excuse me, what? I think they went upstairs, though. Go ahead.
Your Honor, I don't know what the state's going to do next, but I suspect that it's something along the lines of they're going to use the iPad, and Mr. Binger was talking about pinching the screen. iPads, which are made by Apple, have artificial intelligence in them that allow things to be viewed through 3 dimensions and logarithms. Logarithms, I don't understand it all either. And it uses artificial intelligence or their logarithms to create what they believe is happening. So this isn't actually enhanced video. This is Apple's iPad programming creating what it thinks is there, not what necessarily is there. And I don't know what's going to happen, but we had this video enhanced. We have testimony regarding it. And this is one of the topics that came up. I asked my expert. I said, do you know of anything that does something like that? Because that was when Detective Antaramian testified about pinching his telephone. And that's what I was told. And that's what I think this is going. And I don't think that it's appropriate. It's wrong.
Mr. Binger?
Your Honor, I think everybody in this room has a smartphone, whether it's an Apple iPhone or some other device. And I think we've all taken a photograph or a video at one point or another and used the pinch to zoom in feature. This is a common part of everyone's everyday life. In the olden days, you had a photograph and a magnifying glass, right? That doesn't change the photograph. When you use a magnifying glass to look at words on a paper or a photograph, the magnifying glass doesn't change the image. It doesn't change the pixels on the paper. It doesn't change the words in the book. All it does is make them easier to see. The pinch and zoom feature on the iPad or the iPhone or an Android phone, whatever device everyone in this room has, does that exact same thing. Now, if counsel has an expert who will say that this is unreliable or distorting the image or something along those lines, even though this is something everybody in this room has done with countless videos and photos throughout the last 10 years of our lives here, this is a factor. This is a feature of everyday life in America now with smartphones. If they want to have an expert come in and say it's unreliable and you can't believe what's on that screen, they can do that. We're still in their case. And then the jury can make a decision as to whether or not pinching and zooming on an iPad or an iPhone is tampering with the video or altering the image or unreliable or shouldn't be given any weight. So if they want to make a jury question out of this, they are free to do so. We're still in their case in chief. But I don't, frankly, understand or agree with anything counsel just said. I've used my phone. I think probably you have too. I think this is something within everyone's common knowledge to pinch and zoom on a screen. And that's what's going on here. It does not change the image in any way. It just makes it like a magnifying glass.
Well, I don't know. When I put the magnifying glass up, then it's enlarging the image. It is not altering the image. What he's saying, and I think, and I know less than anyone in the room here, I'm sure, about all this stuff, but I'm hearing him to say that they're actually artificially inserting pixels into there, which is altering the object which is being portrayed. And so, you know what, I myself, when confronted with these changes in technology, what I usually do is to admit the evidence, but make sure that the finder of fact is aware of the fact that it is not the original image and the method by which it's been enhanced. You're suggesting that I should make the defense bring in an expert for it. My thought would be that actually you're the one who's offering the exhibit, so you should be in a position to offer evidence as to the fact that it is not distorting the object which is depicted.
I would submit, Your Honor, that I think it's common sense to everyone in this room that that's not what's going on here. And what counsel is saying about Apple software and logarithms and things like that is not something that people in this room are familiar with.
I thought I heard the expert say on the stand, and believe me, again, this is not something I'm familiar with, but I thought I heard the expert say that you brought down from the crime lab that in fact that there were alterations made by adding pixels. That's an alteration of the image. So I don't have any problem with it being received, but you're going to have to have someone testify that it's a reliable, I don't want to say mirror image, but because obviously if you insert more items into an area of space, it's going to distort what's depicted.
I think, Your Honor, when the pinch and zoom maneuver is used on the screen, it actually, it takes the high resolution that we see here and it brings it into the point where the pixels are actually spread out more.
I don't. You know what? I'm not going to accept as accurate what Richards is saying, and I'm not going to accept what you're telling me. I said if you can offer somebody who's knowledgeable in these areas the document or the I think you should be allowed to use the image, but this is high risk to me. If you insert more data into an area of space, well, you're wagging your head no. Tell me where I'm wrong.
There's no proof in this record that we're doing that, Your Honor.
I didn't say there was proof of it. I said you have the burden of proof. You're the proponent of the exhibit, and you need to tell me that it's reliable.
The exhibit's already in evidence, Your Honor.
That I know.
The enhanced exhibit is not in evidence.
This is not enhanced.
Well, then why show it? I mean, the reason you want to show it is so because it enhances the image, right? No, one at a time.
I'll say what Mr. Krause is just saying. The defense has taken videos and photos and cropped them, zoomed in on them on many exhibits in this trial. And this is, again, like I said, the magnifying glass is not changing the image. What the expert testified to about his software program was that he uses, I think he called it MFAR5 or something like that. It was a software program he was using to create the additional images or the exhibits that were introduced with regard to this drone video. And he talked about what that software program does. He was not talking about the common, ordinary, everyday pinch and zoom feature on the Apple. They're two different things, Your Honor, and I want to be precise about this because I don't think it's fair to equate the technical video editing software used by the crime lab with pinching and zooming on an iPhone. They're different software programs, different procedures, and I don't think it's fair to extrapolate this. Every one of those jurors is familiar with this process. This is a fundamental part of our lives nowadays. It's much like 100 years ago people used magnifying glasses. This is no different than that. And I think this is common knowledge, and I don't think I need any sort of expertise on this issue. If the defense wants to quibble with it, they have an expert who can offer testimony. But the exhibit's already in evidence. It would be no different than me putting up a photograph of it and then holding up an enlargement. I mean, we had a guy come in yesterday with Walgreens prints. I mean, this is what is done with photographs all the time. There's enlargements done in the lab. It doesn't change the pixels.
No. You know, I don't want to hear about what happened earlier in the trial that came in without objection. If you didn't object, then I didn't address it. Now, I'm not going to police this case, so everybody, anytime somebody wants to put some evidence in, I'm going to say, well, wait a minute, what about that? What about that? I have to have an objection. I get an objection, and then I rule on it. There has been no objection during this trial when either side has exploded an image or anything like that. If you'd have brought in an objection, if he'd have brought in an objection, I would have ruled on it. But to say now, well, this has already been done during the trial. I've got an objection in front of me now. He's suggesting that the amplifying the image is altering what is portrayed, the image which is portrayed, and you're giving me as a defense, it's no different from using a magnifying glass. I don't believe that, because if I take, the image is the same, and all it is doing is improving my poor old vision. Here you've got someone, to correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe the expert testified that he had inserted, or either him or the device inserted additional pixels into the image. That
different program.
Well, I don't know what kind of I don't care what kind of a program it is. The question is the image in its virginal state?
These are technical issues. Mr. Richards has just made representations with no basis whatsoever. Absolutely. Mr. Richards has just made technical representations with no basis in this record whatsoever. He is questioning a common part of life that we use, everyone uses, every single day. The expert who testified was talking about a different software program, and it does make a difference.
I don't know.
Well, then if it's going to be an issue, let's
You're
make
the
an issue out of
proponent. I said before, I'm not going to talk about it further. You're the proponent, and you need to assure me before I let the jury speculate on it, that it is a reliable method that does not distort what is depicted.
So
Okay, so we're going to take a break.
I understood you correctly. We can play it now, and then we'll tie it up later.
I don't think that's what I said.
That's what I thought you said, John. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I did. If I said that, shame on me. I said that we're going to take a break right now. And I said, before I'm going to allow this to be amplified in the way that you want, it is going to have to be demonstrated to me that it's a reliable way to do it.
Then we would request an adjournment to do that now.
Well, we're not going to adjourn the case now to do that.
Well, before I am done with my cross-examination of this witness, I would like to use this video, and I will need some time to make arrangements for what you're asking. So I would ask that before I am, I would like time to do that before I'm done cross-examining this witness, because this is an important exhibit that I intend to use with
Well,
this
it
witness.
depends. Why don't you get on it right away? And, maybe you can get somebody to testify on this within minutes. I don't know. So we'll take a break. Let's.
What system are they using on the iPad?
We can answer that question. Not off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Well, okay. Let's aim for 3:20 on that clock, which is. Yeah, let's aim for 3:20. Oh, we got one in the back. All right, let's get the jury.
Ladies and gentlemen, jury, I'm going to move that TV in front centrally. We're going to watch exhibit number 82. This is a version of the drone footage that was introduced by our expert, James Armstrong, yesterday. And I'd like to be able to put this TV centrally so everybody can see it. So if you could let us know if you're able to see it when we move it, please. Oh, I'll turn them up. Are all the jurors able to see that okay? Both sides? Judge, may I use Sister Marciano's? Thank you very much. As we play this video, as we play this video, ladies and gentlemen, the jury, I would direct your attention to this location, which is at the front end of the Duramax. There's an individual here on the sidewalk who is pushing in a wheelchair, and there's a little bit of a gap there between that individual and the Duramax. And I'd like you to keep your eyes on that location. Before we begin the video, Mr. Rittenhouse, are you able to see this video okay?
Yes.
All right. Please go ahead and play that. Would you please play that again? I'm going to have you pause at a moment right at the beginning. Pause. Now, Mr. Rittenhouse, you told us earlier everything that you did when you first got to this location, correct?
Yes.
What you didn't tell us is that right here on the video,
You have your gun raised. Don't shoot.